All right, gang, let's get started. Good morning. Good morning. So I want you, if you would, I want you to write this down. Just write down this simple statement. What I believe matters. Just take a second to write that down. What I believe matters. In other words, perception is reality. I mean, we've all heard that phrase, but man, it is true. I just want to share a story with you in light of that statement that what I believe matters. You know, Thomas Edison, we all know the name. The guy received over 3,000 patents for inventions that he created. I want you to think about that. 3,000 patents worldwide. Most inventors are lucky if they can get one patent during the course of their careers, and he got over 3,000. Talk about a brilliant man. I mean, things like the light bulb, the phonograph, and all sorts of things. I mean, 3,000 items. It would literally take an hour to very quickly read off all of the inventions that he created in his lifetime. And yet, you know, his beginnings were much different than I think most people would imagine or know. You know, when he was a kid, of course, some people know that Thomas Edison was hard of hearing. And because of that, when he was a kid, it was difficult for him to learn. And on one particular occasion, his teacher gave Thomas Edison, this young boy, a letter and instructed him to go home and give it to his mother. It was in an envelope. It was sealed. So he did what what a good kid would do. Now I don't. I think about what my kid would do if he were given a letter by his teacher and asked to hand deliver it to his parents. I'm not certain that it wowould make it to the house. But Thomas Edison brought the letter home and gave it to his mother. His mother opened up the envelope and read the letter. And I'm just going to read off what the letter wrote here because I want to make sure I don't miss it. It read this: "Your child is a genius. This school is too small for him and doesn't have enough good teachers for training him. Please teach him yourself." That was the letter that Thomas Edison's mother read to him. Well, years later, when Thomas Edison's mother had passed away, he was going through her personal effects and he came across this letter and he recognized it. You know, he recognized the envelope and he opened it up and he read the letter. And this is what he read: "Your son is addled." Now, that was a word that they used to use, addled, meaning mentally ill. "We won't let him attend this school anymore. Signed, the teacher." So interesting. Thomas Edison's mother knew, of course, that she could not read to him the letter that was actually written. And furthermore, that she didn't believe what was written there. So she did take on the charge of educating her son. But man, the most important thing that Thomas Edison's mother did for him was simply to protect him from that negative statement, that negative letter. So I've got a question for you, gang. Who is the number one influencer of your mental well-being? Is it your spouse? Is it your parents? Is it your clients, your children? I want you to think about this. Is it the news media? Are you allowing the news media to be your number one influencer of your mental well-being? Because so many people are, so many people do. What about politicians? Heaven forbid. And yet there are people who do that. See, I believe that the number one influencer of your mental well-being should be you. It's you. In fact, I know that it is. The question is, do you recognize that? So many people will at least consciously say that they believe that, but then on a subconscious level, in so many ways, they turn over control to the external forces, to their spouse, their parents, their clients, the news media, politicians. So I've got a question for you. When you woke up this morning, and I apologize for my voice, when I get allergies, I start to lose my voice. When you woke up this morning, how did you feel? On a scale from 1 to 10, how did you feel? 1 meaning not confident at all, 10 meaning absolutely confident. That's the way I felt this morning. I want you to just think about that. I want you to write down the answer. On a scale from 1 to 10, in terms of your level of confidence, how did you feel? 1, not confident at all. 10, meaning absolutely confident, indestructible. Like, this is going to be an amazing day. I want you to think about this. The average person will have 60,000 thoughts every single day. Well, the fact is that I say 60,000 thoughts that the average person will have. It's actually, if you think about it, it's probably more likely the average woman will have 60,000 thoughts. The average man will have about 3. And we all know what the average man thinks about. He thinks about sleep. He thinks about sustenance, food. And the third thing also starts with an S. And you can probably guess what that is. If you want to put that in the chat line, you can, of course, answer that question. I'm not going to say it. Anybody know what it is? Hello, is anybody out there? Somebody, what is the answer? Jerry Scott. See, now he's a good man. He kept his mind out of the gutter. And Jerry, that is the answer, of course. Yeah, it is. It's sports. I don't know what anybody else was thinking, but that's, of course, spot on. So, but the fact is, the average person has 60,000 thoughts. And the vast majority of those thoughts, gang, are negative. Here's an interesting fact. This is a medical scientific fact. Do you know which day of the week most heart attacks occur, or when you are statistically more likely to have a heart attack? You know which day of the week it is? Yeah, it's Monday, Nahme. It's Monday. Now, here's the question for you. What day of the week sees the lowest rate or incidence of heart attack? Saturday. Tim, you're right. It is. It's Saturday. It's Saturday, which is so interesting. Now, here's something that's interesting relative to those two facts. Even if you were to take Monday off, right, your chances of having a heart attack are greater on that Monday than any other day, which is interesting. Even though you're taking the day off, your chances of having a heart attack on that day are greater. And do you know the reason why? Just think about that. Why would it be that if you don't have to go to work on Monday, because you took that Monday off, that your risk of having a heart attack on that day is still greater than any other day? Yes, Nakme, that is the answer. Your mind is still thinking the way it thinks on a quote unquote normal Monday. Isn't that interesting? It shows you how important it is what we think about and the routines that we go through. And I say routines, I'm talking about specifically the mental routines, the way in which we think consistently on a daily basis, on a moment by moment basis. So, you know, we talk about prospecting all the time, talking to people, but gang, I want you to recognize something, and this is important. I want you to write this down. The number one conversation that you will have with yourself is this conversation about what you're thinking about on a daily basis. The single most important conversation that anybody can have is the conversation with themselves. And the single most important conversation they can have with themselves is what they're thinking about at any given moment, consistently. It's really controlling what we focus on. It's why I asked the question, who is the number one influencer of your mental well-being? You know, those external forces that I talked about, your spouse, parents, clients, the news media, heaven forbid, politicians. The number one conversation that anybody will have is the conversation with themselves. And it's that conversation about what they are thinking, what they're focused on. Because see, what I believe is that we have the ability to change on a very conscious and subconscious level what we think about consistently. And that, gang, and that's the key. It's the reason I said in the very beginning, perception is reality, that what I believe matters. Now, I know that we all know this intellectually on a very conscious level, but again, practically speaking, are we doing this on a subconscious level? Are we taking care of what we think on a subconscious level, so that what we are thinking about has the ability to improve us, not break us down? So I just want you to go through this exercise with me. I just want you to take the next 60 seconds or so, and I want you to write down the top 3 negative things that you say to yourself. Just take a second to write down the top 3 negative things that you know that you consistently say to yourself. And here's the thing, for some of you, it's going to be a challenge to do that. Not because you don't say negative things to yourself, but you bury it so deeply that you're not paying attention to it, that you don't know that it's there. So just take a second and write down the top 3 things that you say to yourself that are negative. The top 3 things that you say consistently to yourself. What do you say to yourself? Do you say, I'm stupid? Do you say, life is unfair? So Mike says, I don't think quickly on my feet. How about I'm not enough? I'm not worthwhile. I'm not good at fill in the blank, ... I'm not good at. How about using, words of just an absolute nature, right? Never, can't, always. What are those top 3 negative things that you say about yourself or to yourself? See, sometimes it's not just about yourself, it's about life, could be about others. What are those top 3 negative things that you say? And if you're having a hard time identifying one, I would tell you that, well, there's a negative thought right there, because you're having a hard time admitting that you have that negative thought. It's scary. It's scary to admit that we say these negative things to ourselves, especially when they're deeply personal. Mike says he's too old. So I want you to think about this now. Now that you've written down, hopefully at least 1, if not 3 or more. And what I would say about that is this, that if you've written down more than 3, it doesn't mean that you are really screwed up. What it means is that you're able to access that information more readily than maybe some who only got 1, 2, or 3. The good news is, and the cool news is, that you had an honest conversation with yourself. They say that the first step to recovery is admission. They say the way to snuff out evil or to kill a fungus is to shed light on it. Mushrooms don't grow in the daylight. They grow in moisture and in shade and in darkness. So now I want you to think about those 1, 2, 3 or more things that you wrote down. And I want you to imagine 20 years into the future, believing, and I'm going to say this very intentionally, believing those lies. So just actually write that down. Ask yourself this question. If I continue to say and believe these lies, what will my future look like 20 years from now? If I continue to say and believe those lies, what will my future look like 20 years from now? See, as you ask that question, you really ponder that, think about those things that you say. I mean, Mike, for example, you say right now that you're too old. 20 years from now, what are you going to be, right? I mean, man, perception is reality. Just to that point, because we could talk about each one of the lies that all of you have written, but to Mike's point that he's too old, really, because see, I remember back when I was in my 20s and going to the gym, I remember this group of guys, about 4 of them. The youngest one was 86 years old. The oldest one was 94. These men would come in and work out and do their thing. And this group would go together at least once, if not twice a week, and downhill ski at Alta in Utah, ski resort. Now, these are some pretty difficult slopes. And we're talking about these men who were in their 80s and 90s and still acting very young. See, really, isn't it about perception? So I ask you that if you believe those lies that you wrote down, what is your life going to look like 20 years from now? Are you happy? Are you rich? Are you sad and poor? Are you married? Are you single? Are you healthy or are you sick? See, what we think and what we believe matters. It matters. And as much as we might think that, well, that old adage of perception is reality, or what I believe matters doesn't really matter, it doesn't have that much of an impact, I'm here to tell you it is everything. It is everything at its core. And it is the reason that Thomas Edison's mother shielded him from that letter that was written, because she knew that if Thomas Edison believed that his reality would be much worse. So it's not about being naive. It's not about deceiving ourselves. This is what it is. It's about telling the truth. See, I used that word earlier very intentionally when I said, when you wrote down those things you say about yourself, if you continue to believe those lies, underlying lies, what would your life look like in the future? I use that term lies because they are lies. You see, gang, here's the thing. Each and every day, we have an opportunity to choose whether we're going to be an optimist or a pessimist. Now, see, the pessimist would say, no one knows enough to be an optimist. And I suppose that's true. But the alternative is true as well. No one knows enough to be a pessimist. It is simply a choice. You get to choose whether you're smart enough or not smart enough. You get to choose whether you're too old or not too old. You get to choose whether you're a great prospector or not a great prospector. And I don't mean in terms of the actual skill, because you got to practice to do that. I'm talking about just simply the belief. One of my favorite mentors and historical figures is Muhammad Ali. And I will tell you, the number one reason is not because he became such a great boxer. It was because his absolute belief in himself. And what is so interesting is that because of his absolute belief in himself, he became a great boxer. But he said consistently, I am the greatest. And the crazy thing is that he said that even before he became famous, even before he was a quote unquote champion in the eyes of the public. Gang, do not underestimate the importance of the conversation you have with yourself. What you believe matters. Your perception is your reality. So I just want to encourage you to do this. In terms of that exercise of when you wrote down all of those things that are negative, all those negative things that you say about yourself, I challenge you, I implore you, I beg of thee, write down a statement that is exactly the opposite of that lie that you wrote down. In other words, write down the truth. Because what do they say about the truth? The truth shall what? Somebody put it in the chat line. The truth shall what? The truth shall set you free. That's right. If you will take the time on a conscious level to recognize those lies and say, that is not true. And in fact, this is true, and write the positive statement and keep that at the forefront of your conscious mind. Because, gang, our subconscious mind is habitual. It is habitual, and it is in control. And so we have to, on a very conscious level, root out those habitual thoughts, those negative thoughts, those 60,000 thoughts, the vast majority of which are negative. We have to combat that on a very conscious level, but we have the ability to do that. We have to change our own conscious perception. We have to refute those things that we say to ourselves in the dark, in the quiet. We've got to, just like you root out a fungus, right? You shed light on it. You bring light and warmth to the situation, right? It's called truth. Gang, here's what I know. That within you, everything that you need resides to live the life that you want. It is already within you. Your potential is already there. It's like the sequoia tree. When you plant a sequoia seedling, the sequoia is already pre-programmed to grow to the heights that they grow. Whereas a Japanese bonsai tree is already pre-programmed to grow to the height that it grows. See, each one of you is already pre-programmed with an amazing potential. The question isn't whether it's there. The question is, will you tap it? Will you recognize it? And that is a very conscious level experience, not a subconscious level. We have to take control. Remember, perception is reality. What you believe matters. So recognize that and take control of this, because that is the number one key, the number one of anything that you could possibly imagine or cite or contest or contend. The number one factor to your success is what you believe and your perception. All right, gang, let's finish this up with some closing affirmations. Great job on being here. Have an amazing week. And remember, as important as it is to have a conversation with yourself, it's also important to go out there and have conversations with people in the business of real estate, because that is what leaders do. They go out and they talk to other people and ask how they can serve them. So go out and serve to a very high level. Here we go. I succeed.